Hey guys, welcome back. As our previous demo, we managed to complete the full stack development using Laravel as backend with Postgres as database and React with Redux-Toolkit with frontend. So this time, let's work now with the Docker Compose. So let's start. To start with, let us create our Docker Compose YAML by typing docker-compose.yaml. Now, we're going to create this in a sequence way. The first thing is we need to set first the version. So for the version, we're going to set this to version 3.8. Now for our services, okay. So for first services, I want to name this as Postgres-DB. Okay. So before that, let's work also with the volumes and networks. First, let's work with the volumes. And we're going to label this as DB data. And then we're going to set the driver as local. And then for our networks, let's call this as netcon. And then let's set the driver to bridge. All right. So next, let's head over to our Postgres. Okay, so from here, let's begin setting up the container or the container name. Going to name this as postgres-db. And then let's set up the image as postgres, and this is the latest one. Okay, next, we're going to set the environment, and we're going to define the following. The first one is Postgres _DB, and I'm going to name this as my DB. The next one will be the user, and I'm going to use the default, which is the Postgres. Next, let's set also the password. So from here, I'm going to use the default one. So either way, you can set any password in this section as long that's the password or the password that you recognize during the creation of Laravel. So later, we're going to use this information as well when we reach the Laravel section. Okay, so next, let's set the volumes. Now for our volumes, let's call this data. And then we're going to assign this to /var/lib/PostgreSQL. And then /data. All right. And then let's also set the ports. So for our ports, we'll be using the same ports, the 5432. Okay. And then from here, we're going to set the networks. Now for our networks, let's copy this one, the netcon. Now if something goes wrong, let's set the restart unless stop. All right, so that's pretty much everything we need. Next, let's compile this now by opening our terminal. And from here, let's type docker -compose up and wait. All right, so this will take a while. If you want to, you can skip this section here. Once this finish, we can see the progress afterwards. So let's wait. All right, so at this point here, okay, since there's no error, so let's review every logs from this section. Okay, good. So notice here, this one is already created. So which means our database in our Postgres was already created. Now to confirm this database, let's add, or to check that, let's add a extension. So by heading or selecting this section here, let's search for Postgres. Okay, so we're going to use the available Postgres from the VS Code. So I'll be selecting this first one, which is the 655,000 as of this time. So let's install that. All right. So at this point here, our extension is already installed. So notice this icon here. So let's select this one. Now, by doing so, make sure we are in next to this one so that we can follow along. So first, we need to click this plus. Okay, so from here, let's begin by entering the local host by typing 127.0.0.0. Okay, so, or if you notice here, okay, it should be that one. So it should be followed like this one. So by typing 127.0.0.1, then enter. Okay, so from here, we're going to define the username. So let's copy this one. Then for the password, let's copy this one. For the port, let's use the default port. And then let's select this standard connection. And there you go. So notice here, we already have or already listed the database. So I'm going to select our database, which is the MyDB. If you recall here, so select this one, then hit enter. Okay. So this time, it will going to display everything from this section. So let's click that. There you go. All right. So there's so many ways on how to view this one. But since we already working or using the VS Code, it will be best to use the extension built in with the VS Code. All right. So that's the first one. So the next one is we're going to work on the Laravel services. So let's work on that. Okay. So as part of the requirements, I already bring back the Laravel, which is under API. Okay. So you should copy the Laravel folder and paste it here next to our Docker Compose. And then from here, let's create the services. So for these services, I'm going to name this as PHP-app. Okay, so from here, let's set up the build and the location path, so which is the API. And then going to set the image to 8.1 FEM. So for the container name, I'm going to name this as PHP-app. Next, I'm going to set the ports. And then from here, I'm going to set the port 8,000 to 8,000. Okay, for the volumes, okay, so from here, I'm going to use the folder as our volume, and I'm going to assign that within the bar slash www slash html. Okay, next. So we're going to set the depends on. So from here, it will be dependent to the Postgres DB. So let's copy that. Okay, so same goes. We can use the or set up the networks to, to netcon. Okay, so next we're going to set the restart unless stop. Okay, so let's review everything. You will notice that I don't use any extra services, which is the NGX. So for this demo, I'll be using only the purely Laravel as our services. Now, how to work with this one is we're going to call everything from our Docker file. So let's work with our Docker file, and then you will see how to use only the Laravel as our services and no other third parties such as the PHP or the NGX, okay, or the NGINX. So that's a typical server that they're using right now. So let's work on the Laravel part, which is the Docker. Okay, right. So head over to our API, and from here, let's create the Docker file. Okay, so I'm going to paste the code line by line. So first, let's begin with the first one, which is the from the source. So for this demo, we're going to get the source from the PHP 8.1 -fpm. And then from here, we're going to copy the composer lock. So take note, we're going to copy that and forward to this location. Now, since we're doing this location, we're going to set that as our directory. Okay. And then from here, I'm going to install the dependencies. Okay, so don't you worry. All of this code line here, I'm going to upload this to my GitHub, and then you can access that later on after the discussion. Okay, so basically that's all we need for the dependencies. So take note, not only the updates that we're doing here, but also we're going to get the source from the node source here, and also the Postgres, this one. So this is a combination since we're working with Postgres. Okay, next. Next to this line, we're going to clear the cache by using this command. And then we're going to install the extensions. So take note, we're activating the PGSQL and this PDOSQL. So along with also with the PDO, zip, BCMAT, and other the rest in this section. Next. Now, this next code line, I just added this just to speed up the process of Laravel. There were cases that when you deploy a Laravel, it is extremely slow when using a Docker. So for this extension, but first, I'm going to enable this one. This is the off catch. So this is famous for if you're using WordPress or any from the PHP framework that you're working on besides Laravel. So we'll be activating or using also the off catch or of the catch. All right. Now, so that's the setup. So for the configuration, we have two parts here. The first one is we need to activate the extension by running this one. And second one is we need to activate or copy the op catch from the local directory. Now let's work first with the op catch. By copying this file, we're going to create a new file here. Okay, so this is the op catch settings. So I'm going to paste this op catch settings. Okay, so once paste, let's save this line. Then let's close this one. Okay, so what it does is we're copying the op catch ini, that file, to the Docker directory. So for this particular directory. Okay, next, I'm going to install now the composer. Now, since we're dealing with Laravel, we'll be using this composer also within the Docker source. Okay, so once done, we're going to configure now the user permission. By typing this code line, we're going to create a username www, and we also add this group within the Docker environment. Okay, so this will serve as the root section or the root user for our Laravel. Then from here, we're going to copy all the code line within this our section to transfer to this directory. So this is the /var/www/html. Okay, and then after copying all the files, we're going to copy also the permissions of that particular permission. So from the source permission, we're going to apply that also in that particular directory, which is this section here. Okay. beside from this permission, we're going to set also this permission for this particular folder, okay? Including also the storage and the bootstrap. Okay, so since we're dealing with PHP migrate, it will store in this section for this storage location. So very important to set also the permission for that so that once the migration will take effect, this will also update our or directly update our destination path without any problem of permission issue. And then next to that, we're going to change our permission to this one. Okay, so this will be now running the permission that we set earlier. So this is the www. And finally, at the end of this code line, we're going to expose this port. Okay, since this is the default port for the Laravel, we're going to expose this port. Now that we're done with our Docker file, let's head back now to our Docker Compose. Okay, there is a settings that we need to configure, but first we need to create a folder within the root section, and we're going to name this folder as PHP. Now for this PHP, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to name this as local.ini. So what it does is, we're going to overwrite the ini section of our PHP. Now, here are the settings that we need for our configuration. Okay, so basically what we need is the memory limit. Depending on the Docker size, you can also configure the memory usage within the Docker file or the Docker location. Now, next, we're going to configure also the upload max file. This is the upload measurement or the usage during the process. So let's say you're uploading a file or image. So this is where we set up this upload max file. Also, we upload also or set up also the post max size. Okay. And also the last one is the max execution time. So these are only basic configuration. Depending on your requirements, you can this. All right. So that's all we need for our PHP local ini. Next, since we have already the configuration for our PHP ini, we're going to insert that in this volume section. Okay. So from our local directory, which is the local ini, we're going to store that in this location. So feel free to pause this video and copy this code line. Okay. So next, this is the very important. Take note, when we deal this one, we assume that we're just ending up with exposing the port 8000. So the whole process here is just the installation and permission setup. Also the activation of the extension. That's the role of the Docker file in the API folder. Now, what we're going to add now in our PHP app here, these services, is a command that will automatically do the migrate and at the same time run at the same time. Okay, so two process at the same time. So basically, what we're going to add here now is the command that we're going to do it during the process. So the first one is, or rather, we're going to add that in this last section Okay. So basically, this is the command that we're going to use during the process. By using this shell, we're going to activate the PHP artisan migrate. So this will migrate all the this one here, the migration file, if you recall. Okay. So all of this migration file will be automatically executed. Typically, when you see those blogger that they demonstrate using a command line, from our example, we're going to do it automatically. So no need to do such command line. Then, after we do the migrate, it will going to activate also the PHP artisan serve, and it will be host on the local directory. Okay. So that's basically the last section for our PHP services, or rather the Laravel. Okay, so feel free to post this video and copy each line. And then afterwards, we're going to run this using Docker Compose app. So let's work on that. Okay, so to run that, the first we need to cancel this running code by pressing Ctrl C. There you go. So let's clear everything. And then let's run back our Docker Compose app. So hit enter. All right, so it seems that there's no error in this section. So let's wait for this to finish and see the finish progress. So let's wait. All right, so I guess we have an error here. So let's review the process. Could not translate hostname PostgreSDB. Okay. So notice here, it's looking for the Postgres post. So I guess I set up the Laravel is not recognize the Postgres database. Now to begin with, if you recall, we set up the Postgres-DB. So since we're dealing with Laravel, we're going to use these services here as our newly host. So let's configure our Laravel. But first, we need to cancel this one. There you go. Then let's head over to our Laravel. Then head to the .env. Okay. Earlier, I already set this up. But since I already changed something, so let's replace this host. By default, if you recall our earlier demo, this was default to 127.0.0.1. So since we're using Docker, we want to copy this Postgres-DB as our host. So we're going to use that one in here. Okay. So aside from this one, make sure everything here, especially the database, username, and the password, is the same with our Postgres. Okay. So make sure they are the same. So if you encounter some error on this part, so double check on the .env in Laravel, right? So let's try this now. Let's try now. Okay, so there's another error here for the port. Okay, fail to fatal user Postgres connection. Okay, so we're going to check everything here. So we have an error with our authentication. Okay, so let's review our .env. Okay, so the password. So I'm going to copy this password. Okay, so this is my earlier example. So take note, just make sure everything from the username, password, and the database should be the same with the Postgres-DB. Okay, so hopefully nothing else. So that's everything we need for our Laravel. So now to test this one, let's cancel again. Okay, so but before we proceed, notice here, the migration already started as expected. So the only thing probably now is the settings that we set earlier. Oh, so it's already running. Okay, so which means I think I'm looking on the wrong section. So everything already works. So notice here, it's already migrated and already running as expected. So which means the earlier example is already okay. So they're definitely the same. Now, if we're going to run this again, there you go. So, but at this point here, there's nothing to migrate because earlier example, the the running code a while ago is already migrate all those stuff in our migration file. Now to check if this is working, we're going to head over to this extension and then let's open this one. There you go. Okay. So notice here, we have already now the tables needed for our Laravel. So everything works now. So which means our code line in our Docker Compose, especially this section here, this one, this is workable. So that's it, guys. Now to test if this is running in our browser, we can simply copy this one. Now by running localhost, if you remember, this is /API/ now let's get that routes. Right. So let's copy this one. This one and hit enter. Oh, sorry, this is 8,000. It should be 8,000. There you go. All right, so this means that our Laravel is running perfectly. Okay, good. Now that we managed to run our Laravel, it's time. Let's include now the app. So let's head back to our code line and then let's cancel this one. I'm going to post this video and I'm going to paste the app, which is the front end. Okay, so let's get back. All right, so right now I already included the app. Okay, so I'm going to clear everything from here so that we'll be only focusing on the app. Right. Okay, so head over to our Docker Compose and let's build that services. All right. So from here, we're going to name that services as web app. Okay, so for our source location, we're going to set the build. The build path is the app, and then I'm going to set the container name, which is also the web app. I'm going to set also the stdin to open, also the tty. Next, we're going to expose the port by typing 3000 for the host and 3000 from the Docker. Then I'm going to set the volumes. And from here, we're going to mount the local directory to our new directory in Docker. Next, we're going to map also the or exclude the app. This is the location of the node modules. Right? Next, we're going to set the defense on. So from here, we have two things. The first one is the database. Right? And the second one is the PHP app. Right? Next, we can copy the section here, this networks, and this restart. All right. So from here, I'm going to change this to on failure. All right. So basically, that's all we need for our app or this front end. So next, let's work now with the Docker. So let's proceed to that. Okay, so open our app. And from here, let's create a Docker file. Now we have few things from here. So the first one is from not latest. And then let's set the working directory, which is the /app. And then let's copy all from package.json to the local or to the new directory. Okay. Then we're going to run npm install. Next, going to set the copy. Okay. So we're copying all the directory to the new location. And then let's expose the port, which is the 3000, and also the running command by typing cmd. I'm going to type the npm start. All right, so basically that's all we need for our Docker file for our app. So let's run this code now. Okay, so make sure everything is bound by typing docker compose down. Okay, so now, let's run our docker compose. Okay, there's no error in this section. So from this section, let's wait a bit and see the entire progress. Oh, so we have an error copying. So let's check our files here. Fail to solve key, fail to calculate checksum, package.json not found. Okay, so this should be package. Okay, so this should be package.json. So let's try one more time. Right, so we see some progress here. Now notice here, there's a error within the use effect. So probably at this point here, it's still waiting for the backend to complete, even though we already have the reading here. So this one here is still waiting for the backend to load. So we need to wait a few minutes before we run our code. All right. So at this point here, notice here, it starts reading the backend. So this is depends on that we set earlier. So if you notice, we set this one, this to finish. So right now, it's already started running this one. Now, for the last step, we'll be waiting for this one to finish as well. So let's wait a little bit. Okay, so I think we can work on this now. So just head over to your browser. Then from here, let's type the localhost 3000 and there you go. So let's try this one. All right, so that works. Okay, good. Okay, so that works as well. So let's try deleting this file and there you go. All right, so that works. Now for our conclusion. In my earlier example, if you recall from the previous chapters, I'm using Windows. Throughout the series, I have no issues with using the full stack or the backend using Windows and Docker. Now, only this time when using Laravel, I noticed that running Laravel with Docker in Windows operating system was pretty much very slow. So what I did is I checked online and people suggest to disable the WSL and using Hyper-V as well. But yeah, I think that's much help on the Laravel part. But doing so, it will cause a lot of steps to achieve that. Now, to simplify this demo, I shift to Linux, which is right now, I currently using Linux Mint. So far, I don't have encountered any issues using Linux. So feel free to try and compare the difference. So same goes. If you have some concerns, comment down below and tell me if you managed to work it fast using Windows. So again, if you find this video informative, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And see you guys on the next video series. Cheers!